Folks, it's time to suit up. Well, partially because it's hot as shit right now in the UK. We are here for another episode of the Soul Sessions. I am Soul, but with me today is the dude with the most devastating moves, CJ West, my friend. Welcome to the show.
How's it going, mate?
Very well, pal. But CJ, you know what I always like to do? Every guest has a story, and every story has a beginning. So, CJ, how did your story into professional wrestling begin?
Well, I actually started in 2016, but before that, I went in 2011 So in 2016, I went to a place in Dublin, Ireland called Mainstage Wrestling. In 2011, I went to Irish Whip Wrestling, which was it's the place where like Sheamus came through there, Drew McIntyre, Pac was over frequently as well. These are all guys, Wade Barrett, who'd come through there. So it was kind of, to me, from an outsider, I went to a lot of the Irish Whip Wrestling shows when I was a young kid. And I was like, oh, I want to get into wrestling. When I went there, it wasn't what it seemed like from when it was there. Like all the guys had left who I'd named before, and it just wasn't the same place. So they did a tryout weekend. I made it through on the tryouts, but then there was a load of like hurdles to jump through and stuff like that in terms of like the location wasn't where it was initially advertised. It was somewhere entirely different, like really far away from where it was initially listed. Like it would be like, and me as like, I don't know, I think I was like 16 or something at the time. I was like, this is not really feasible. I can't drive there. Like it was pretty far away in the middle of the country in Ireland. And then it didn't seem like it was as professionally run as it came across in previous like iterations. So because of that, I decided to put my dreams kind of on hold for a bit, and I ended up going to Main Stage in 2016. And the reason I went there was I kind of got the bug again. I'd been watching. It was around that time that it was the G1 Climax. I think it was 27, and Tetsuya Naito and Kenny Omega. I was very into my New Japan, where I had this amazing match, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this another go. So I got in touch with one of my friends who had been involved in wrestling, but he moved to New Zealand, and he told me, he's like, go down to Main Stage. They have a guy who's just back from WWE. He was in NXT there. Joe Cabre is his name. He wrestled as Luther Ward or Omen, and he's like, these guys will train him properly. So I went down there, and still at it, however many years. What's it, 7 years later? So that's pretty much how my story starts.
Well, the story's ongoing, CJ, my friend. You know, it was great to see it. But, you know, obviously, when you mentioned, you know, Irish wrestling, a lot of people will immediately go to thinking of Sheamus, probably one of the biggest names associated there. For you, CJ, do you think Sheamus, with his link to, you know, being so close to Irish and wrestling as well, he's probably going to be the most biggest icon from that?
Sheamus has accomplished the most, in my opinion. But you also have to give like Becky Lynch props, because Becky Lynch is the only Irish person to main event WrestleMania. You know what I mean? She did and the first ever female main event, and she has accomplished a lot. I feel like Becky Lynch was kind of the first superstar since really John Cena to kind of break into the mainstream as well. Like you could see she was getting a lot of coverage in the States compared to everyone else. And like when she was saying she was the man, it was like when Johnny Cash said he was the man. You couldn't really dispute it, you know? Like there's Balor is there as well, who was, you know, first ever Universal champion, despite how short his reign is. And like Sheamus, though, like to me, these three are first ballot Hall of Famers, no questions asked. But I think it says a lot as a country that we have three talents like that who are on such a high level, who have accomplished so much. And even if you look at like Becky and Balor, I know they're there a while, but comparatively, it's a relatively short amount of time for the amount that they've accomplished. When you look at like some of the other people who've accomplished similar feats over longer periods, Sheamus, like, but you talk about what he's done. He's won the Royal Rumble. He's you know, been multiple time world champion. Like he's won King of the Ring. He's kind of ticked all the boxes for everything. Like the only thing he has to do is win the Intercontinental, and then he's won the Grand Slam. So like, and they're making a big deal out of that as well for the last year or two. He can't get, that's the one that keeps getting away from him. So yeah, I don't know, like it's, I find it hard, and it's hard to also gauge because their careers are still ongoing. Like, you know, Sheamus has accomplished a lot, but I also feel like in terms of like mainstream drawing power, maybe Becky Lynch is that little bit ahead of him.
Very much so as well. And, you know, those three individuals are great talents in themselves. For you, CJ, you have to put a favorite match to each of those individuals, Becky, Finn, and Sheamus. What are your personal favorite matches for those three individuals?
For me, for Sheamus, I think the three-way at Mania this year was brilliant with Gunther and McIntyre. Like that for me is still match of the year. That was fantastic. And it says a lot. Like not that he's old, but at that age, like however many years he's been, like you have to keep in mind, I've been watching Sheamus on the Irish Indies since I was a kid, and like to see him still going at that level, however many years later, like it's absolutely amazing. So that's there for sure for him. For Becky, I'm trying to think. Like, I guess the Mania main event, like it was just special. Like it's two Mania matches there, but like honestly, for me, it was really special just watching it. Like, getting to see, that's the first female main event, and it's like a lot of my coaches are friends with Becky, or like Becky has been over to Ireland and popped into the schools here and things like that. It's to see someone who, this isn't this, like they are a superstar, but they're not completely unreachable. It's like you can get to this level if you keep working, kind of a thing. So that for sure. And then for Balor, well, he has a lot of good matches. I tend to lean towards his NXT run though, because I think his NXT run was really, really, really good. And maybe the match against Samoa Joe in NXT for the belt, that was like two guys who were kind of like, I was a big Ring of Honor kid growing up, so like I loved Joe's reign like back in the day, and in Ring of Honor like early to mid 2000s, and then seeing him against Balor, just brilliant match.
No, absolutely. The Irish scene is booming as well. But I've always been interested with like the training in schools there, because I've had guests on from Scotland and they've mentioned where they're training from, and even the States as well. But obviously, I've had Renzo Rose, who I know you're familiar with, and he talked about how Belfast really appealed to him going over and training. So, what do you think is it about the Irish wrestling training scene is so appealing to people?
Where I've been fortunate enough, and this year I've broke out a little bit, and I've gotten around Europe a bit more than I had previously. And I've also had the opportunity to train, and that's for me, is training is always the big thing. Like I like to go and see different places to train and see what way people train, because you can pick something different up everywhere you go. You never know everything. Like, and I've talked to guys in the past who have said, like, oh, like I remember talking to a guy a few years ago who was a champion. I'm not going to name names, but he was a champion in his local promotion, and he'd stopped training. And I was saying to him, I was like, why are you stopping training? And he says, I'm at the level now where everyone has to get to me in the school. And I was saying, yeah, but like you're big fish, small pond. Like there's a whole ocean out there, and like there's so much stuff you don't know. I always compare it to professional football. When does Lionel Messi not turn up for training? He turns up for training. He's the best player in the world, like greatest of all time, in my opinion. He still trains all the time. Like that's it's the same with wrestling. And you go different places and you can pick up different things. So for like training in Ireland, I train at the School of Irish Wrestling, which is the school of over the top wrestling. It's and we have had top tier coaches over the years there. Like the head coach is Joe Cabray, who is ex NXT. He was in what was NXT called before? It was NXT FCW. Was
Yes.
that it? Yeah, Florida Championship Wrestling. And then he was the first intake class in NXT as well. So like he started around the same time as like the likes of like Charlotte and like Alexa Bliss, and I think Buddy Murphy was there, Wesley Blake, all those kind of guys, Miro, Braun Strowman, they were all there around the same time. But he came back to Ireland, and he then started over the top wrestling. But he is like, you look at the level over the top wrestling is on in the European scene. It's one of the best in Europe, possibly the world, in my opinion, for independent wrestling. Um, he's an unbelievable coach, and he has his fundamentals down. He's really good at like character work. Like he's had two very successful characters on the independent scene, where he wrestled as Luther Ward, who was based on like kind of the fighting Irish traveler character from like Snatch, is where it kind of comes from, and the movie Snatch. And then he had Omen, which was like a demon character, but like if you watched Omen, it was he came out with this big mask with like dreadlocks, and like he'd shoot fireballs in the match, and his entrance was a grand spectacle to behold. And this kind of stuff is like, he's a good guy to take character work advice from, and then with the promos on the other side of Luther Ward, his promo work was getting him book places. People hadn't seen matches and they were seeing his promos, and they're like, we want to bring this guy in just for the promo alone. Then we have like Paddy Morrow, who is, in my opinion, if you don't know who Paddy Morrow is, he started in NWA Ireland under Finn Balor and Paul Tracy. And Paddy Morrow is one of the guys who he's He's retired now, but he still coaches. He is the best seller, bar none, I've ever met in my life. Like, in terms of, if you haven't, for anyone watching this, look up Paddy M, I'm sure, or Paddy Morrow. I'm sure some of his matches are on YouTube. He is the best seller, bar none. He is unbelievable at just conveying injuries. And like, you think I'm exaggerating, I promise you I'm not. Eddie Kingston had a match with him, and Eddie Kingston was putting him over on podcasts afterwards, saying that this was the best guy he'd ever worked with because he was so good at selling. He could put himself in positions for everything else. So like, if you want to talk about, and his brain is so good, there's not a match that I have that I don't send to Paddy, because he will see things in different ways that you won't necessarily see things conventionally, and you'll go and you go, oh crap, that's a way better way of looking at things. So he's top tier. And then we have, Session Martina, who's, her record speaks for itself. She's been all over the world. She's world traveled. She's been signed for Ring of Honor. She has been everywhere. We have LJ Cleary, another name who's making names for himself all over Europe at the moment. We have another guy, Sean Maxer Guinness, who's he lived and wrestled in Japan for a few years for 0-1, and he just brings a different style. Like I was saying about the different styles, he shows you the Japanese style. You get a good mix of, like, you have like your kind of catch as catch can European style. And even before that, we had JD McDonough before he went off to NXT. And we're fortunate enough that when he's around, when he's back, he still from time to time will pop in and share his knowledge. So that is beneficial. Like, all this stuff, it makes for, it's just a melting pot of, like, we've really good coaches pushing us to the next level. And like, these are all guys, all these people I've named, they've been around the world. They've wrestled like everywhere, and they've picked up the knowledge from everywhere else. And I think as a community as well, like the Irish wrestling community, we're all like, I've been places where people are kind of backstabby, and like, it happens in life, like, but for Irish wrestling, it's very, like, I can't recall instances where guys don't want to see each other. We all want to see each other do well. And I think that's just an Irish thing. We take a lot of Irish pride in things, like the fighting Irish. We'll root for our own. Like, you see it in like UFC, when an Irish guy goes in, or like boxing, it's like the whole country gets behind them. And it's kind of the same with, like, we see it now with, like, we're all rooting for JD to do well. We're all rooting for Aoife Valkyrie to do well. We want these people to go and, like, break through the ceilings and achieve things. So I think from an outside perspective, going back to what you're saying about even like the likes of Renzo, coming here, you see, when you get a taste for it, I think it's hard to then go back to what you had before. Like, we have like 6 Italian guys who've moved over here now to train with us. We have like Omari, who, he is the best in-ring athlete I've ever seen, but he lives over here now and he trains with us. We're drawing for training more so than the wrestling at the moment, if you get me, like, than the actual matches. Like, and then we had a camp. Sorry to cut across there. We had a camp there 3 weeks ago where we had 76 people turned up for the advanced class, and we had like 16 brand new beginners came, 2 rings over like a weekend, and it was unbelievable camp. But we had people from, we obviously had a lot of Irish, we had English, we had Scottish, France, Spain, Portugal, Israel. 2 Mexican guys. We're getting guys from all over the world just coming to train with, like, Irish wrestling. So it's a good thing when you see, like, when you can see that was the 3rd camp we did, and like, I met some of the Scottish guys on the 1st camp we did, but like, you can see it's been growing and growing every time we do these camps, and what it's turning into is, like, it's unbelievable to be involved and be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, wow, it's absolutely like a jack of all trades. You have people going out and bringing back that knowledge. But something I picked up there as well, what I feel is, like, I've had guests on, and I feel myself, is a lost art is ring psychology. Having the entrance that gets the reaction and selling properly and showing that, you're hurt and getting that comeback win. Do you feel like ring psychology is definitely a lost art in wrestling?
100%. I think so. And you see it on, I've been saying it on, I kind of think UK and Irish wrestling went through a phase where there wasn't really an adults product, for example, and now there's a lot of adults products, like, that appeals to over 18s or over 16s or whatever, a more mature audience. But now I kind of see on the shows that I'm doing where you're wrestling like a family friendly show, but guys are still trying to wrestle for the adults product, and it's not the same kind of it. it doesn't necessarily work. It's not the same kind of psychology you'd use in both shows. There are common grounds in it, but there is different things you have to realize about like working to different crowds. And this is something that like Joe, the coach, is always saying to us. It's like, and I make sure I do it every show. I go, so because sometimes you go to a family friendly show and it'll just be a load of adults will turn up. Or you might think you're going to like an adult heavy show and you go and there's a load of kids in the audience. You have to kind of work to your crowd. So I make sure I go and I peek through the curtain before every match I have. I'll say, right, this is the kind of crowd that you need to work for. And even just in ring, there's a lot of guys who they kind of just want to do moves, but like it's not the moves that are going to get you noticed or get you places. Like for me, I'm very character heavy. I'm here gimmicks to the max at the moment. But like it's previously I had been focusing on moves when I was a little less experienced, and it's ironic because I started off as a cowboy wrestler. Like I wanted something comfortable, you know, and I was like I did a cowboy and I do moves like a cowboy, and I was getting booked in places around Ireland for doing this cowboy character. I stopped doing the cowboy character and I kind of just went to being like a narcissistic heel where I wasn't doing any of the gimmicks anymore. And like, I kind of noticed that my bookings weren't as frequent anymore. And I was like, what's going on? And I realized people will say this, and I'm going to say it now, and there's going to be wrestlers who listen to this and will just go, oh yeah, but they don't really take it on board. It's not the moves that get you booked. It's your character and your personality that, unless you're Will Ospreay, and I can promise you, you're not Will Ospreay. It's like, unless you're one of these guys who's top, like 0.1% of guys, you're not getting booked for your moves. You're getting booked for what you bring to your show, your character, and how you fit into the show. So I think that psychology is kind of lost in today's days. And I don't know everything. Like, I'm going to make this crystal clear. I don't know everything about wrestling. It's a constant learning process, and it's a constant, like, you try things. Some things work, some things don't work. And the things you don't think will work sometimes work. And you're like, that doesn't make sense. Like at the moment, the biggest move I probably do is an axe handle. But the thing is, I start doing that, like for anyone listening on audio in class, with my hands over my head, but I start bringing my hands up and the crowd starts coming for it. And I was like, it's an axe handle, and the crowd erupts for it. And I was like, previously I was doing like, you know, I was trying to do like springboard ranas off the thing, and it wasn't getting as big of a reaction. I was like, you have to be smarter about the way you do things, not necessarily like, there's a saying in wrestling, don't throw away your bumps, but you also need to work smart. Like if you can get a bigger reaction for doing an axe handle than whatever springboard into whatever move you can do the axe handle, you know?
No, absolutely. You know, and it's sad to see it's a lost art. But if there's someone watching there and they're training, and CJ, you got to recommend like 3 people to look at for character work in wrestling right now. Who are the 3 people you want to recommend for great character work?
LA Knight is top of the list at the moment. LA Knight, if you watch him week in, week out, he is doing the minimum and getting the maximum out of it every single show. He is, if you're watching, like, he's hot. He's hot as hell at the moment because he's growing like every week, building momentum, and you can see the reactions he's getting. Money in the Bank is tomorrow, is it?
I think it's next week, is it?
Next week, but I guarantee you, especially in the UK, that crowd is going to erupt for him. And you will see, like, it's the character work he's been doing, and that's getting him through the roof. Even Seth Rollins, another example of a guy who I felt like he had a bit of a lull for a while, but he's doubled down. He's invested in this. He's a little bit psychotic, avant-garde kind of artiste, and it's brilliant, and the crowd loves him. And even like he found out, like, I know it's not really a recent thing, but the entrance music, he changed it up, and he had the whole, he's conducting the orchestra of the it's all character work. It's all character work that just grows and grows. And I don't want to say another WWE person, so like I'll give you an example close to home of like Session Matt Martina. Session Matt has been like reinventing herself. She's doing the same character she was, but she's reinventing herself. She's coming out with like, she has like it's going to sound silly, but she has light up shoes, and these are just another things that like attract you to the stuff that she's been doing. And like, you cannot deny over the last however many years she's been wrestling, like she's not 15 years, I don't think, but she's between 10 and 15 years. She's constantly reinventing herself, and while staying true to her character. So that is a good example of someone you can see, and she's getting everywhere. She gets, like, there's not a top promotion that you see in Europe that she hasn't been to, because she is top tier.
Absolutely, and great names there as well. But I want to go into Over the Top Wrestling, because I know you make their debut for them in 2021. You're going from training and making a debut for this great company. Was there a sense of fear, finally making the debut?
No, like not really. It sounds, I don't mean to sound narcissistic or whatever, but I felt I was ready. I like to take things back. Like I've been training since 2016, and I was in the main stage wrestling, and main stage wrestling closed down and turned School of Irish Wrestling was opened by Joe, who promotes OTT, and I was training there from day one. I'm still training there. For me, it was a case where plans change in wrestling. I had a lot of things where I was meant to get involved in storylines, and there was a lot of stuff that was meant to happen that never happened. And then, like, right as I was on the cusp of breaking through, the pandemic happened, so everything shuts down for a while. And I said to myself, I was like, right, and I'm going to change things up entirely. I'm going to have a different character. I'm going to have a different look. I'm going to have a different persona when I come back. So in the pandemic, I was like, I need to do some stuff that benefits. I'm a kind of guy who I can't sit still. I want to be productive all the time. So I wanted to grow myself as much as I could. So I was fortunate enough that I had a home gym, and every month I was buying more stuff in the home gym. I was working out all the time because I said, I know a lot of people are taking their foot off the gas. Like, I'm like, oh, I don't have to work out. I don't have to be in show shape. I was like, I'm not going to be the guy. I'm going to be in shape when this comes back. So I was working hard on that. I had a dream, and like this sounds ridiculous. Like, to preface this, because I talk about this on Twitch. I started streaming on Twitch, and this was part of growing my brand. Is like I wanted to be able to have a bit of a brand, so I started streaming on Twitch, and it grew a bit of a following. And like, fortunately, some of them were Irish wrestling fans, and I conveniently managed to. Some of them are now fans where they weren't previously, so it had a bit of a crossover appeal, and that was pretty cool to see these guys who had no previous interest coming to the shows. And like, I have a great picture of like the first show back when I'm on it, and it's a load of people who just watch my Twitch streams. And like, I was playing video games, and I was talking about, like, I was doing some slight crossovers with wrestling, and it grew from there. And one of my friends, he was in Club Tropicana, Captain Sexy was his name, big popular tag team, big popular character before the pandemic. He went the other route where he ended up I got him into streaming, and now he has gone, and he has like, I don't know, like 1 million followers on YouTube. And Aaron DeLoco is his name. You should check him out. But he's a big deal now. Like, he's really blown up. And like, he's a guy who, when he was in wrestling, he said to me, he's like, oh, there's a lot of colleagues, but there's very few friends. Like, I'll always stay in touch with you when I leave. And to be fair, he stayed true to his word, because we talk all the time. We ring each other once or twice a week. He's a good dude. But like, he's there. I got him involved in streaming. It was kind of like a knock-on domino effect. Once I started streaming, a load of other Irish wrestlers started streaming as well. So it was a bit strange. Not many of them keep it up. Even I do it infrequently now. I try and do it when I can, but between training and everything else, it's hard to do. But sorry, I went off topic. I had a dream, and in this dream, this is the middle of the pandemic and stuff was mental. One of the guys, Sean Maxer Guinness, was in the dream, and he was my manager. I was having wrestling matches, and he just kept screaming. Like, he had like these kind of sunglasses, like Pit Viper shades on, and he just kept going, the dude with attitude. And I was like, what the hell is he doing? Like, and like, the dream made no sense, but I remember this really vividly, like, to this day. And I woke up and I talked about it on stream, and the guys in the stream were like, oh, that's actually really good. You should try and incorporate that. So I was like, all right, I'll do what I can. So I started growing out a mullet then. Like, I'd grown my hair pretty long in the pandemic, and like, I had experience cutting my hair in the past, so I shaved in a mullet. And then I met up with like Joe for like when our borders opened up a bit and you could meet for like go for food and stuff. I met up with Joe. We went for food one day, and he was like, that mullet's really good. You should play into that. And I was like, well, if the promoter's saying the mullet's good, I'm going to play into it more. So I started leaning into being kind of like an 80s throwback wrestler then. And like things just really snowballed from like, it came to me in a dream, as weird as that sounds. But then like I focused on that. And by the time the first show came around, I remember I shot Joe a message, and I was saying to Joe, I was like, Joe, you really need to have faith in me for this show. It's like, I promise I'll get reactions. And he was like, okay. Like, we came up with like a plan for like how the debut would work. And I was like, if you announce me, you're going to sell tickets as well. I know that sounds things, but I was like, I knew I could probably get a few of the guys who were watching from Twitch, and they were dying to get out of their houses at that point. So like, they all came to the show. We got a great picture, you know. I remember waiting behind the curtain, and like the moment my music hit, and it was like the announcer, Dennis Murphy, who's a brilliant announcer, by the way. He announces, he goes on the mic and he goes, the following is a singles contest. making his OTT debut, and the place, like, it was at, like, I think it had like a quarter capacity based on the restrictions, and the roof felt like it came out the place. It erupted, and like I could feel the hair standing up. It was one of those moments, like, I'm like, oh my goodness, like oh my goodness, like I didn't expect this kind of reaction, and coming through, I was just going on pure energy going out. But like that for me is like that's my favorite moment of wrestling. I remember vividly standing behind that curtain just going, right, this is your moment. You've worked for this for however many years, like make the most of it. And then before I've even come through the curtain, the place erupted. So yeah, really, really nice moment.
Oh, it's so wholesome. A dream leading to an absolute glorious debut.
Yeah.
I know you would have some expertise in tag team wrestling. You know, you're a tag team ring technicians, and they would face Aussie Open. I mean,
oh, we never got to face Aussie Open. That's the where ring technicians. We're not tagging together anymore. He's Fabulous Nicky is now. I think he's Big Dirty Nick or something like that. He's tagging with another guy, Bittersweet Josh, and they're in a tag team called BDE, or Sweet and Sour. They have two names because one's not kid show appropriate. But yeah, the guy, it was fun tagging with Nick. I'm not gonna lie, like we had a blast doing things together. It was kind of how ring technicians formed was I was in the middle of I was in the middle of this little singles run, and Joe pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, we have no tag teams. I need a tag team. Can you start one and pick a guy who'd fit?" So I was like, well, Nicky had been in Club Tropicana previously, who were kind of, they had this Miami Vice kind of vibe about them. And I was like, he'd be a good fit with this 80s character that I'm portraying. So we then did we were kind of like an 80s throwback tag team. We were like an homage to the Rockers, like Midnight Express, those kind of 80s wrestling. We based a lot of our tag moves around that. And we shot a load of old school PSAs and things like that, like don't do drugs, like you can prevent forest fires. And like it was really fun tag team. We were having a good run, like the crowd was really getting behind us, and we had fans coming to the shows dressing as us as well, which was a cool thing to see. Like it's so strange to see someone come and they're wearing they did a really good job. Like they're wearing your exact tights. So you're like, oh, what the hell? But then the Aussie Open match was meant to happen, but there was issues with Mark Haskins couldn't get over. So there was no main event for the show. So instead it got moved to Be Cool and Jay against Aussie Open for the tag belts, and Aussie Open won the tag belts. And instead we ended up wrestling Sammy D and the aforementioned Renzo Rose in his OTT debut. It was unfortunate. It was the match that got away, and we never got it in the end. And then things happened where myself and Nicky, we got to a point where Nicky wasn't really feeling the 80s character. It wasn't for him, and that's fair enough. Like that happens in wrestling. And he said it to me, and he wanted to do this more. He wanted to be like a model / stripper type thing, and I was like, that doesn't really fit me as a person. And I also said to him, I was like, it's just one of those things. We talked about maybe doing an odd couple thing, but then I was like, I don't think it'll work. So we amicably went our separate ways. There's no bad blood at all between me and Nick. We're still good friends, and like he's I wish him the best. Recently, he won the tag belts in No Limit Wrestling with Josh, and I couldn't be happier for the boys. Genuinely, like Nicky deserves a lot more plaudits and a lot more credit than he gets, in my opinion. So yeah, it's good to see them doing well. And like the thing is, I feel like it's kind of benefited us both in a way. Like we're going separate ways, but like I've been fortunate enough where I'm getting to go around Europe a lot more, and it's a lot easier to get around as a singles guy than it is in a tag team, because you're not just talking about bringing two guys over. One guy's always a lot easier. But yeah, like it was one of those things where unfortunately we never got the Aussie Open match, but maybe one day. You never know.
You never know in this business, my friend. Some things happen someday. But you mentioned going around Europe as well, and I've always been interested. I mean, I hate flying down to London. I think that's a hassle. But I mean, going into that and traveling around Europe with the whole airport schedule and everything, how did you find yourself accustomed to traveling?
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. There's no denying I hate being at the airport. I remember talking to LJ about this, and LJ was saying he just times it to where he spends the least amount of time possible in the airports, because he's a really busy guy. I think he's flying 4 or 5 times a week. But yeah, he's all over the place. I'm kind of a weekend warrior going around, but yeah, I've been to Glasgow a lot this year, and I'm so sick of Glasgow Airport. I'm so sick of Dublin Airport. I'm just I'm not complaining now. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't mind it. I grew up with my parents had a motorhome, so we traveled around Europe a lot. Like what we do is we get a ferry over to France and then we drive wherever. So I've been fortunate enough that I've been all around Europe already. So I'm well used to traveling, but like there's no easy way to like go, traveling's fine. Everyone gets fed up of it. You're just sitting there waiting to go somewhere for a few hours. It's a mobile waiting room essentially is what traveling is. But yeah, like I don't know, like I kind of have it where I'm spending the least amount of time possible while also feeling comfortable that I'm not going to miss my flight in airports now. So, yeah, like it's okay. Like this year I've been fortunate enough to get to, like, I've been to Scotland, I've been to Spain, I've been to France, and like just you get used to just traveling around. I've been to Wolverhampton with OTT doing production a few times as well. So yeah, like that's you get used to it is the quick answer. And there's no my thing I've done now is I make a lot of content for social media. So I try and record my matches, or if there's no recordings of the matches, I'll give my phone to one of the runners on the day and I say, can you record on my match? And then what I do is I'll edit it on the traveling, so it makes things shorter because editing takes a little while. I have it down to an art that I do it all on my phone now, and I'm just so used to it. Like it passes the time where I'm like, okay, I'm pretty much, it doesn't feel like I've wasted time just waiting around because I'm doing something productive. Like I was saying earlier, I'm always trying to be productive. I'm doing something productive while I'm traveling, so that helps.
Oh, so I know when I took my laptop to Mania to edit shit, it was a pain in the arse. I was like, I should have just done this on my phone, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But you mentioned coming over to Glasgow, which you've done stuff for Community Pro Wrestling. Doing stuff here in Scotland. Was it kind of like maybe a tonal shift from Ireland, or was it just kind of like the same thing?
So I was fortunate enough to myself, LJ Cleary and Danny Cross, aka Jay, were fortunate enough to be a part of the first Community Pro Wrestling show coming from Ireland. So I remember coming into the locker room. It was a bit strange because that was my first experience coming into a foreign to me locker room. And I think it was Danny Cross's first time away as well. But like we were fortunate enough that I had met Ravy Davey, Sam Barber, Thatcher Wright previously at they came over to one of our camps in like the camps I was talking about earlier. So I met these guys and I really hit it off with the guys. Like when we were over, like a few of us did. We had a great time all week and I stayed in touch with them. I talked to like Ravy Davey and Sam Barber like pretty much every second day at least. So coming in, I felt a bit welcomed. And then I'd met like Leighton Buzzard previously as well, where I went over. I was a guest at an ICW show looking at the production backstage and things like that. And I had met Leighton Buzzard there, and I'd been on a night out with him. I got to know, so I knew a few of the guys going in, so it didn't feel really bizarre coming in. But there was kind of like I could feel a few of the guys are kind of like, oh, who are these guys? Like they don't know what to make of you at first because you're coming into this like it's a first time that this promotion is running, so the locker room hasn't really got its like mentality yet, and there's a load of guys from all different places. It's not just like, oh, we're all from one school kind of a thing. So it's like, what's it going to be like? But like I've been fortunate that I've been on a whole bunch of Community Pro Wrestling shows, and I have a whole bunch more that I'll be on before the end of the year as well. But it's kind of like the locker room is brilliant. The locker room is brilliant there. I'm going there, you see new faces, you see regular faces, but they're all guys who like, it's everyone just wants to work for the scene. No one's being selfish. No one's going like, oh, I'm going to go out there. And like, they're working for the show. They're working for the scene. Everyone just wants to put on the best show possible. And it's I can't speak enough of Community Pro. Honestly, it's my favorite thing to do in wrestling is going over to Community Pro Wrestling. That and like No Limit Wrestling here. It's just there's no like stress. Like you still want to perform well, but it's like it's such a welcoming environment that you don't want to like you're gonna put on your best match you can, but you still like you feel comfortable. Like it's hard to gauge that feeling, but it's just like it's a very I hate saying this, but it's kind of like a family nearly. Like it's like your wrestling family. You're going to see like I'm off to see my Scottish cousins over in CPW. So.
Well, we're a fun bunch, the Scottish. Yeah, we're a bit. You mentioned someone there who's been on the show and is quite an interesting fella. Good old Thatcher Wright.
Yep.
I want to know. Well, Thatcher is the Community Pro Wrestling champion, and I want to know, CJ, maybe that belt look better around your waist.
I think so. As far as I'm aware, I'm the last person to beat him. If he had the belt at the time, I think that would have made me at least in line for a title opportunity. I think there's something down the line there for sure. I think I can beat him again. Like he's not that hard to beat. I've done it once. Why can't I do it again? Like I respect what he's accomplished. Don't get me wrong. And like I remember seeing him when he beat Ravy Davey in that tournament final for the championship. And there were some sour faces. I felt bad for the kids, and Davey gave it as well. And it's not a discredit to Davey, but Thatcher's always got something up his sleeve. But I 100% think I can take him.
Yeah, just be careful with that Margaret Thatcher book, because I've heard it's quite horrible.
I felt it a few times. Trust me, it's not nice.
Oh, damn hardcover editions. Couldn't at least been a paperback. But what we've seen is some people who win championships put their own custom spin on it. Cena with the spinner, Jay Briscoe with the Ring of Honor championship. If you were to win the Community Pro Wrestling Championship, how would you put a CJ West spin on it?
Probably be draped in headbands. might have to get a pair of sunglasses for it as well. I don't know. Like for me, it's like I'm old school, and like I like that, but I also like respecting the heritage of a belt. You know what I mean? Like so for me, I don't think I like I said I'm an 80s throwback guy. Like I think I'd respect the title for what it was. Maybe I'd change up to match the title and might get some matching gear or something like that, as opposed to the other way around.
Ooh, some golden shades and golden passes. That's been a great club. Well, CJ, you talked about earlier about New Japan and your love for Japanese wrestling. We've got AEW and New Japan's Forbidden Door coming up tomorrow as we're recording this. Your excitement for the show, are you quite excited for what AEW and New Japan are producing tomorrow?
Yeah, the first show was brilliant. For me though, like I'm a bit like Tetsuya Naito he's my favorite wrestler, like from Japan. Like my top three of all time are Miz, Naito, and Michaels. I don't know if I could put them in a particular order, but like I love Tetsuya Naito. I love the arc that he's gone through is brilliant. So I'm a bit disappointed that he hasn't been on either of the Forbidden Door shows. But there are still some banger matches there to be lined up. Like Okada and Bryan is going to be unbelievable. Then I think Jungle Boy and Sonata as well. I think that's actually going to be a low key banger. I think a lot of people aren't giving that the props it deserves. Like there's a load of tasty matches that are going to happen there that like I'm really excited to see. Shingo is not involved either, and like Shingo is for me like he's the best work rate wrestler in the world, and he needs to have something, man. He needs something. He's so good.
Well, we've got Sting and Darby having a mysterious partner being announced on tonight's edition of Collision. If you had to pick a New Japan guy, CJ, would you pick Naito or Shingo Takagi?
Oh, to go with Sting or Darby, I think I'd actually go with Hiromu Takahashi for sure, because like you have to think like I think he kind of matches the he's a bit loopy vibe. So like I think like Takahashi is the best junior in the world, unquestionably for me in the last I don't know how many years he's gone. He's so good. That's what I was talking about. He's brilliant in ring, and he's also got what I was saying earlier. He has that character down to a T. Like he comes out with his mental coats and like he plays the crazy gimmick really, really well. So yeah, for sure, I think he'd fit in. But if I'm picking between Shingo and Naito, I think Shingo kind of fits the vibe a bit better. Of he's just gonna be there to mess you up. So.
Oh, excitement's all around for Canada on Sunday. But, and we had Bobby Fish on, who's, former Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions and NXT. He talked about how Japanese wrestling is such a good atmosphere for everyone to learn in. The crowds are unique, and as well as the sort of customs as well. Mm-hmm. Is that on your list to go to, CJ, Japan, eventually?
Oh, man, my list is to go everywhere I can. Like, Japan is a dream goal, but I understand, like, it's hard. Like, it's, if I can get there, absolutely. But you have to be realistic. It's like I try not to get too far ahead of myself. I work on what's immediately in front of me and do the best I can with that. And then I've been fortunate enough that lately, like the more I'm doing stuff, the more opportunities are opening up for me. So it's like if I keep doing that, maybe one day. But yeah, absolutely, Japan would be the dream for me.
No, absolutely as well. And if you were to have a match against any New Japan wrestler and you got to pick, who would you want?
Naito, unquestionably, have to be Naito.
It's a fair choice, but let's actually let us spice up a bit. If it was over any New Japan title, old, present, you got to have, what one would you want to have around your waist?
The previous iteration of the IWGP Heavyweight, because like that is the most beautiful belt of all time, in my opinion. They should never have changed it.
Regrets, we've had a few, and hopefully one day we'll get the old beautiful V4 back.
Yeah,
one day we can have hope. I know you talked about Ring of Honor earlier as well and your love for it. And we've seen that Tony Khan's relaunched it after his purchase. Have you been watching the product? Are you a fan of it?
I've watched it, but to me it just kind of feels like a different shade of AEW. It doesn't feel very what Ring of Honor was. In the Ring of Honor, to be fair, is even before Tony Khan came in, was very far removed from what it was. Back in like I think since Sinclair have come in, they've kind of made it like something entirely different than what it was back in the like I used to tape trade or DVD trade, you know, like back in the day. I have so many old Ring of Honor DVDs, and like I remember looking for this really rare like John Walters against Nigel McGuinness match, and the reason I wanted it is it was one of the like best examples of like really good unique chain wrestling I'd ever seen, and I was trying to find it, and it took me so long to find the match, and I have it on DVD upstairs. I can't remember what show it's on, but it like I was looking for this match for like 2 or 3 years, and I remember talking about it one day, and it was Joe Cabray, the coach, was like, "Oh my, I remember this match." Like he'd seen it as well, and I was like, "Oh yeah." So for ages, the two of us were looking for it, and then I finally found it. Like it was really good. But yeah, I'm proper old school Ring of Honor. Like I grew up watching, you know, obviously everyone was watching WWE, but like Ring of Honor was my bag. A lot of guys like I liked TNA as well. Don't get me wrong, but for me, Ring of Honor was the one growing up. So.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, you had to pick a Mount Rushmore for Ring of Honor. Who are the 4 faces on that Mount Rushmore for you, CJ?
Like if you're talking all time, it's probably Joe is up there, 2 Briscoes, and more than likely, I'd probably go with Nigel McGuinness. Honestly,
wow, that's a good pick as well. And you know, Nigel's doing some great stuff just now in AEW as a commentary, but there's been hints with AEW All In coming later in the year. There's been some rumors and speculation going around that we might get Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness again. I mean, look, I'm excited for that, my friends, but I'm interested in you, CJ, seeing that match happening in All In, Wembley Stadium. Do you think if it happens, it should be main event?
It depends. It depends on what the rest of the card is. That's the honest answer. Maybe not. I don't know. Like if you have a bigger draw for main event, that should be main event. I'm always an old school. I think the world title should always be main event. So that's where I stand. I think whoever is has the title at the time should be main event. But yeah, like I don't know. I'd be very worried about what would happen in that match based on the last few.
Oh god, they were some absolute bangers were back in the day, weren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, unification of the pure and the world title. Oh, stellar wrestling at the end of the day. I mean,
that was the ring posts. Oh, the headbutts, they live in my head rent free, and oh, it's horrific,
but beautiful for the world of professional wrestling. Hey, CJ. But you know, I want to know, CJ, as well, where we've looked at the Owen Hart brackets that are coming up for AEW, and a matchup, if things go according, will be Punk and Joe 4. Do you feel like if this matchup happens, do you think it will be an addition to their Ring of Honor trilogy legacy, or do you think it might be a hindrance? It could be, it could go either way. The men are older now, but what's your thoughts?
I don't know. Like it's. I don't write anything off. Like I've seen stuff on paper that I thought was going to be brilliant, and it was rubbish. And I've seen stuff on paper that looked rubbish and turned out to be brilliant. So it's hard to tell, honestly. Like I trust the two guys have good enough minds to work to their strengths with it, and like not highlight their weaknesses. So I'd say it will probably be a good one. Will it be on the level in ring? Probably not, because the guys were a lot younger back then, and like they have a lot more roads traveled on their body, pretty much. So yeah, let's wait and see. I'm saying it's probably going to be brilliant.
Prizes all around, and with AWL, and it's going to be a celebration for the whole British wrestling scene. Having such a big event here is stunning to see. But I want to know, if Tony Khan came to you, CG, and said, CG, I want you to have a match on All In, and I want you to pick someone on the AW roster to have, and you were told, hey, on you go, who would you want to have a match with?
On the roster, maybe Hangman Page, because I was a cowboy as well. I think he's brilliant. I think he's brilliant in the ring. Yeah, Hangman Page. I don't think he gets his dues. Like there's obvious answers there. Like you have your Kenny Omegas and stuff like that, but I think Page is a top tier guy.
Oh well, would you pull out Cotton Eye Joe as your entrance music then instead?
I came out to Wild Wild West by Will Smith, and then Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. So it'd be one of them.
Oh, God, Wild Wild West. That's a hell of a throwback.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie's something. I mean, who knows? Maybe it could be in the remake of that, CJ. We could be in the remake of Wild Wild West.
That's where my name comes from there, because he was Jim West was the name of the character in Wild Wild West, and I knew I was going to be a cowboy. I didn't have the name, so and then the start of the song goes Wiki Wild Wild West, Jim West, Desperado. So I was like, oh, I'll be Jim West.
It just sings. It just sings perfectly.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, CJ, we're coming to the end of our time here on the Soul Sessions. But I personally thank you for coming on. And what I like to do with everyone coming on, to the viewers, if they've loved what they've heard of you and they want to see more of you in the ring, what kind of dates have you got lined up for the rest of the year?
Oh, jeez, give me a second. Pull out my calendar. I'm in No Limit Wrestling is the next place I will be wrestling, which is, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but it's July 2nd, which is in the Moat Theatre in Nice. No Limit Wrestling is the most fun you're going to have a show in Ireland. Unquestionably, it is a blast from start to finish. It's a theater setup, so the wrestlers are like in the ring down in front of you. It's all one way, so there's not a bad seat in the house. But as opposed to traditional theaters, this theater stage is on the ground, so the ring is not elevated miles up in the air. So if you get front row seats, you're going to be in the action pretty much. It's a brilliant show, and the next show is actually a Rumble, which I am in, and I intend on winning the whole thing. So if you want to come see me win the Rumble, July 2nd, Mo Theatre in Nice. I will be back in Community Pro Wrestling, the aforementioned Community Pro Wrestling, seeing my Scottish cousins on July 16th. Where that show is, I cannot remember, because I have a bunch of shows coming up. It's in around Glasgow somewhere.
That's on the people see.
But check out Community Pro Wrestling. It's a blast. Honestly, the shows are so much fun. I have such fun time going over there. And then who knows? They're the ones immediately coming up. Then there's actually Hard Knocks Pro Wrestling on the 30th as well, which is down in Limerick in Ireland, and I'd recommend checking that out. And that's more of a mature crowd. So if you're into your more mature wrestling, check it out. Last time I was there, I did I tagged with Session with Martina, and I was doing a Scarface character. So I was like Tony Montana. So we'll see what happens next time. I'm not Scarface again, but I have something lined up.
Well, surprises are in store for CJ West. And folks, don't worry. CJ West's Instagram link will be in the description below. You can give him a follow there and keep up to date with all his journeys in the world of professional wrestling. Well, folks, thank you very much for tuning in for another episode of the Soul Sessions. I have been Soul. He has been CJ West. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely, lovely day.
Thank you.